Right. Okay. Well, Alderman Ruth Simmons will be here momentarily. Here she comes. So let's go ahead and get started. I call together our Human Services Committee meeting of Monday, August 4th. It is 8:22 p.m. and we have a quorum. So I don't have the. Can I peek at your agenda? Thanks. There we go. Okay. So the first order of business is approval of the minutes of our June 4th meeting. Do I have a motion? Okay. Are there any corrections? Because I did have one correction. Basically, it's the time of the adjournment of the meeting, as mentioned on page 3. It says we adjourned at 7:17, but would have been 9:17 since we started the meeting at 8:23. So with that correction, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay. Next is public comment, and June Adrisky, I think, is the only general comment person.
All right. This may somewhat pertains to human relations, but in the last several months, several citizens have asked me to file FOIAs for them, and everybody can file their own FOIAs, of course, and so I sort of encourage them to do that. But I then begin to think, well, what's going on here with FOIAs? And I called the clerk's office today and got some interesting information. In 2006. There were 769 FOIAs. In 2017, there were 924. As of August 6, we're approaching 800 FOIAs. And if you project that to the end of the year, you're going to go to 1,400. So there's a lot of, I guess you could say, citizen interest in the FOIA process. I remember at one time, it was sort of implied I file a lot of FOIAs. No, it's a lot of other people are starting to file FOIAs here. And the other thing that I see here that I think is very interesting, many of my FOIAs go to the law department, so I'm beginning to wonder how much legal staff is tied up on these FOIAs, really wasting time with the legal staff, because the things I'm asking for don't really appear to me to have much legal in them. The city attorney ought to basically determine how much of her staff time is being spent on this. If you take 1,400 FOIAs, I wouldn't be surprised if half a year is wasted on these things, and that is unnecessarily wasted because they're supposedly redacting things, which I think is unnecessary because they're just taking out email addresses, it looks like. But I also am very unconvinced that information is really being given to us. And every time I file FOIAs, the IT department tells me I'm asking for too much information, but these FOIAs are all electronic, so why does it matter? Just, they're saying, well, today, for instance, we have 95 emails on Fountain Square, and we can't give them to you. You need to reduce it. It's 1,000 pages. Well, it's not a hard copy. It's just an electronic file because the legal department has to supposedly look at this stuff. But I don't see what would be in Fountain Square that would have any legal ramifications. I think it's ridiculous what's going on here, wasting resources like this and basically pretending citizens can't see the stuff that's going on. And we know there's a problem at Fountain Square. So I think the council better take a good look at this. And I think there's a reason things are being hidden here too, because when I look at these things, what I'm asking for is what's going on here with the process. And I don't know if my time's running out. Another time, another place. I will say one final thing. An alderman said about pictures and posters and things. Well, remember, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I like to get a lot more extra speaking time in without saying anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It says Alderman Wilson, but I assume that's Alderman Braithwaite.
I guess I have to beg the question. I think the clerk has done a good job about making FOIAs, just the information accessible to residents. So why are they coming to you asking you to file?
No, I think people know that I have to file FOIAs a lot. I think they're just asking me to help them file a FOIA. I tell them basically it's a simple process. Go file it yourself.
So you are directing them to the clerk's office?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't bother to file. People can file their own FOIAs. It's not really complicated. It's quite easy.
Okay.
That's why you're seeing a lot of FOIAs, and I think you're going to see more and more.
Good.
Because as you see what's going on here, there's people are upset.
That's great. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All righty, let's get on with our agenda. And the first item is Resolution 50-R-18, authorizing the city manager to sign the Greenest Region Compact 2 with the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus to support regional sustainability initiatives. And just to get us started, would somebody like to make a motion?
Second.
Okay, and Mr. Jensen, do you want to tell us a little bit about this compact?
Good evening, Chair Revelle, members of the committee, Director Thomas Smith. My name is Kumar Jensen. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the city. So the GRC 2, as implied by the 2, is the second version of this compact. It is a voluntary compact that is administered by the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. The primary objective is to create a set of shared sustainability goals throughout the region that communities can work together on cross-jurisdictionally. One of the primary benefits of participation is not only to show solidarity with our neighbors, but also to be able to access technical assistance through a few programs that are administered by the subcommittee, the Environment Committee of the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. One example is our participation in the Soul Smart designation program last year, which allows us to now be recognized as a community that has reduced barriers for contractors and customers to installing solar throughout the community.
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing no lights? Then all in favor of recommending that we forward this resolution to City Council, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, thank you. So our next item is the police issues work plan update, and I gather we have just one update.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
Right.
members of the committee. My name is James Pickett. I'm a Deputy Chief, Field Operations with the Police Department. Actually, just two quick updates. The first one is the continuance of the crisis intervention training. As of the last meeting to this date, we have 63 officers that have been trained, and we have 4 scheduled for September and October. So that program is continuing. And one of the things that I was informed of is now everybody that's going through the police academies are being trained and certified in crisis intervention training. So we'll be getting an influx of new officers who have already trained. And as you know, that's an important thing as far as our mental health community. Also, I brought along Deputy Chief Joe Dugan, who is in charge of support services, and he's just going to give a brief update on the status of our body-worn camera program. Unless you have any other questions for me, he'll be coming up.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Deputy Chief Dugan with the Police Department. I just want to give you a short update on the body-worn camera program. We deployed 120 cameras in late January of this year. The cameras went out to the patrol, the traffic division, as well as the problem-solving team and the special operations group. I checked today, so far in the system we have 28,000 videos. That's from the body-worn camera or the in-car camera through the Axon system, and that comprises 11 terabytes of data. We are now working to expand the program and add some additional cameras. The additional cameras are going to go to school resource officers as well as members of the Detective Bureau and Juvenile Bureau. Myself and Sergeant Levy have met with representatives of District 65 and 202 in order to get with them to help draft the revision to our policy to include the school resource officers. Hopefully we'll have everything squared away by the beginning of the school year. Anybody have any questions?
Okay. Questions? Yeah, Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. DC, can you clarify? So we had a discussion, I think, with a couple of council members. So in order for either the public or council to see a dash cam video, the person in the video actually has to give consent, correct?
Yes, it would depend on the privacy concerns and what was surrounding it. If there was an arrest, or if the incident was flagged or not, due to an arrest, the use of force, or.
Can you talk a little bit about the privacy of those videos and how that works for the public?
As far as
just so the video is not accessible to just everyone.
Yes,
you can't FOIA the video. Just
correct.
Thank you.
Yes, it has to. Sorry to interrupt you. It has to come from a person involved in the video. You have to be either subject of it or represent the subject of it, such as your attorney or a representative from you that can come and FOIA the items. And we also, if there's other individuals captured in it that aren't part of the incident, or they have to be redacted out before we released any information.
Thank you.
Did that answer?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Oops. Alderman Fleming.
Actually, so I just have a question, not necessarily for you, maybe for us, the chair. So I wasn't here when they made the work plan, when it started being updated to Human Services, but I find that usually DC Pickett is here. It sometimes can be late, and he's telling us no update or one update, or, you've joined us now, so you have an update. So I guess I just would like us to kind of think through this process. If there's no update, do we need to have the report? You know what I mean? Unless we're adding new topics to it, it looks like they've kind of covered a lot of the topics that they've been charged with thus far. And so I find a lot of nights they're just saying, no update, you have a question. So I would love if we're going to get to the point of either adding some things to this, or at least respecting their time, not to have them just come and tell us there's no update, just for a matter of efficiency.
Right. No, I think that's a good point. And there have been at least one other meeting where in fact, I gave the report because it was so minimal, but.
Right. So if we're not adding topics to it, and at this point, I just glanced over it, I think almost everything has been done minus the Citizen Police Review,
right,
or Citizen Police Complaint Review
That's
Committee.
Still in process.
That's still in process. Everything else is, to my knowledge, done. So maybe we just want to think about how this report is used in the future.
Okay. And I think that's a good point. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. And then our last agenda item is Compassion and Choices from the Evanston Action Team. And we have a couple of speakers. Faye Clayton.
Good evening, Chair Revelle and members of the committee and council. I'm Faye Clayton. I'm a retired lawyer and a Evanston resident of more than 40 years. And the reason, is this mic working okay? Thank you. The reason I'm here tonight is as a volunteer with Compassion and Choices, which is the nation's oldest and largest group working for end-of-life options. One of those options is called medical aid in dying. That's where a terminally ill adult who is mentally capable is able to ask their physician to prescribe a medication that the patient may choose to take to end their pain and suffering and bring about a peaceful death. Medical aid in dying has been lawful in Oregon for over 21 years. And since then, 7 other jurisdictions have come on board. In the last 4 years, 4 jurisdictions have joined, most recently Hawaii, just this past April. So with all these collective years of the statute being in effect in various jurisdictions, we have well over 40 years of collective data. And in all those years, I am going to tell you, the abuses, the problems that have arisen are exactly 0, which is quite amazing. The reason that medical aid in dying has not had any abuses in all that time is that it is the laws in all these states, while they vary in small ways, they all have basic, very strict safeguards. For one, the medical doctor must confirm that the patient has a terminal illness, that the patient is mentally capable of making a healthcare decision, and that the patient has been fully informed about his or her options. In addition, it's the patient who must make the request, no one else. The patient must self-ingest the medication, and the patient may change his or her mind at any time. And that's an important point that I spoke this morning with Alderwoman Fleming, and we've been meeting with various members of the City Council and hope to meet with all of you sooner or later. But in any event, the data from Oregon have shown that of the folks who get the medication following the law, a third of them do not actually take it. And yet having it there on their bedside table or wherever they choose to keep it is palliative in itself. It has an important effect for lessening the fear of dying an excruciating death, of suffering endlessly. And that's something that medical aid in dying is of benefit for those who take it and those who don't. It's now lawful for more than 20% of the United States population, but not in Illinois. And that's why this past March, 2018, Missy Fleming, who you'll hear from in a moment, she and I, as volunteers, launched the Evanston Action Team of Compassion and Choices with hopes that Evanston would pass a resolution urging our state to be the next state, or at least one of the next, to pass this very humane and compassionate option for our citizens. Compassion and Choices has found that resolutions, even though they're not legally binding, have been very persuasive. This was the case in California. It's believed that the various cities that passed resolutions in California were the energizing factor that got California to pass the law in 2016. And we are particularly hopeful that this will be the case in Illinois because in Evanston, we already have on our action team both of our state representatives, Laura Fine and Robin Gable, and our state senator Dan Biss is not only supportive, he was ready to introduce it into the state legislature if we got it there while he was still senator. So we're very hopeful that if we lead the way, other cities will follow. There are many other cities in Illinois working on it, but we think we're a little bit ahead of the pack. Since March, when we launched this effort, we've been making, through our volunteer action team, which has a couple dozen or more members, we've been making public presentations at senior residences, places of worship, senior centers such as the Levy Center, and as you may know, a couple weeks ago, we had a sold-out committee, sold-out group that was not sold out, it was free, at the public library. It was packed. We had to keep adding more chairs until the fire department wasn't going to let us do anymore. But we had wonderful questions. We showed the film How to Die in Oregon, which is it's sort of a heart-wrenching but very informative film. We got fabulous questions from the audience, which included a lot of folks from the Mather, by the way, which is only a block or so away. And we've been doing these presentations, and when we do, we often ask people to sign our petition. We have hundreds of signatures of residents who want Evanston to pass this resolution. Last week we spoke at the Equity and Empowerment Commission, and as some of you know, we've been reaching out to, as you all know, we've been reaching out to our City Council representatives, and I'm delighted and proud to say that 5 council members have already pledged their support. So our proposal, which we passed out the latest draft. I apologize for the prior one, which had a few typos since I had internet problems. But the new one is based on, it's got the typos fixed, and it's based on the Compassion and Choices model resolution, which has been used not only in California, but in many states across the country. And among the cities that have been adopting it recently, they range all over the place, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to Albuquerque, New Mexico, to Girdwood, Alaska. And we hope that Evanston will be the next city to pass that resolution and urge our state to do the right thing and make this very compassionate option available to all the residents of Illinois. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And then maybe we'll hear from Missy Fleming, though, and then ask our questions. Is that okay? Okay. Yep.
Thank you. As Faye said, I'm Missy Fleming. I'm also a volunteer with Compassion and Choices and the co-chair of our action team here in Evanston. I've been in Evanston 35 years. It's actually 35 years this week. Coincidentally, I'm a retired psychologist, and I've worked on a number of health initiatives at national organizations for 20-plus years. So that's a little bit about me. What I would like to do is spend a few minutes talking about some survey research data that shows people's support for this initiative and physician support for it as well. So if you won't mind, I'm going to read some of this because some of it's a little bit complicated. A Lifeway research study that was conducted in September, October of 2016, it was an online study, found that 64 Americans who were answering the survey agreed with the statement, and I'd like to read it for you. When a person is facing a painful terminal disease, it is morally acceptable to ask for a physician's aid in helping her or him relieve their pain and suffering. And that was supported by almost 60% of people who are identified as Christians, 70% Catholics, 53% Protestants, and 84% who describe themselves as non-religious. So that's, I think, a good place to start in 2016. A couple months before that, the peer-reviewed Journal of Palliative Care published a criterion for physician aid in dying. So there are actually standards that they're working on and referring to. October 2016, the American Association of Suicidology developed a statement that distinguishes medical aid in dying from behavior that has traditionally and ordinarily been described as suicide. So suicide is not, according to their association, physician aid in dying. Medscape, a physician survey in December 2016, an online survey of 7,500 physicians representing more than 25 specialties. 57% of those respondents agreed with the statement, and I want to read it to you. Physician-assisted death should be allowed for terminally ill patients. Also, we know that 65% of Illinois residents support that as well. Just about a year ago, a Gallup survey, another online, their big survey on values and beliefs. The respondents, 73% of those respondents agreed with the statement, when a person has a disease that cannot be cured, doctors should be allowed by law to end the patient's life by some painless means if the patient and his or her family request it. So support for medical aid in dying was favored by a number of groups, strong support in every demographic. 55% of people who said they attended church weekly, 66% who go once a month, 87% of people who seldom go, and 60% of people who identify as conservatives, 78% as moderates, 89% as liberals, and then 67% who said they leaned Republican, and 81% who leaned Democratic. Last year in January, another survey of physicians showed that, and I thought this was interesting, 58% of those who were practicing medicine in a state that did not have this legislation or law said, quote, that they had been in a situation where they wished the patient could have taken advantage of such a practice. Last year's Gallup poll, 73% of U.S. adults believed that a mentally competent, terminally ill adult should have the option to access aid in dying. And another survey of physicians reiterated their support for this. Last year, several state medical associations and national organizations also demonstrated their support, including the American Medical Student Association, the American Public Health Association, American Academy of Neurology, American Medical Women's Association, American College of Legal Medicine, etc. The Illinois State Medical Society has extensive patient materials and encourages their physician members to discuss end-of-life issues with patients, and that's somewhat new. You may have read in...
So Missy,
Yes.
I mean, how many more people do you need to tell us?
More.
Okay, thank you.
Just one other finding recently, a survey published in JAMA looking at where people died in 2000 and where they were wanting to spend their last time. In 2016, these were Medicare patients, and they were not in hospitals for the most part. At their June annual meeting, the American Medical Association backed off from their opposition for this. Their Committee on Ethical and Judicial Affairs had written a report, and the members sent it back. 50% voted that they needed to send that back and look at it differently. I'd like to conclude by saying that medical aid in dying is supported by many people, including the medical profession, of course, and a resolution from Evanston could certainly support state legislation. I ask that you would consider sending our resolution to the City Council. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So, committee, some questions? Alderman Fisk, did you want to? Oh, okay. Any questions? Gosh. So the request to the committee is that we forward the draft resolution to our law department to ask that they take a look at it, and then it would come back to us and we'd vote to send it on to council. That's the general idea. Okay. So Alderman Ruth Simmons.
Information. Thank you for your time and all your information. I'm not well enough informed. I asked for some additional information that I did not receive. I don't know that I could support any steps forward, even if it's just to take it to legal. It would never be an ordinance in Evanston, no. So. In terms of like using our staff time and all of our resources and heavy agendas prematurely, I don't know that is the most responsible thing to do.
Might I respond? I'm sorry if you didn't get our material. Missy thought she'd sent it to you, but we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And I do want to clarify that the draft we've sent you, which has a little bit of updated material, like, for example, that Hawaii just passed the law in April. That wasn't in a prior version of the resolution. It has been tried and tested around the country. I hope the legal department won't have any trouble with it. There may be some local conventions that you'll want to follow, but I think as a retired lawyer, having practiced for about 40 years, I look good to me, and I'm sure your very able legal department will be able to deal with it expeditiously. It's the one we've used, or that I should say that Compassion and Choices has used in numerous cities around the country, including many in California, that led to that very successful passage of the law. But Alderman Simmons, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I'm sorry if our materials didn't all get to you.
So I asked for any sort of documents you have from the medical community, and I really think I have too many questions to even ask right now in this exchange. I would be concerned about abuse, and you mentioned that there have been 0 incidents, but this is quite a heavy decision, and I understand that it's just a resolution and it's symbolic and you want to take it, to do something bigger with it. But I can't right now support any steps forward. I don't feel qualified or well informed enough to have an opinion on this.
Okay. Well, let me address your first question first about the medical associations. As Missy said, and if you read in the draft resolution, we list those. I think it's in the fourth whereas paragraph from the bottom. There, in the past, decades ago, doctors all opposed medical aid in dying because they said our goal is to keep patients alive, whether they want to or not. And then I don't know of anyone who hasn't had a family member with a terminal who had a terminal illness who didn't say, I would like to just go to sleep and not wake up. And this conversation began to pervade the discussions with patients and their doctors. And doctors began to realize that some doctors were cutting corners. They were providing medication actually illegally, and they were risking their license. And they were also risking their relationship with their patients. And so many doctors who opposed medical aid in dying adamantly, including the medical director of Compassion and Choices, Dr. Gruby, he used to oppose it, like a lot of doctors did, like a majority of doctors did. A lot of doctors came to realize that not only was it a compassionate option for people who were dying anyway, they were terminally ill, by the way, means within 6 months, that's the way the statute defines it, within 6 months of dying in your reasonable medical judgment. So they're going to die anyway, they're going to die soon. Are they going to have excruciating pain, or can they take a medication that will allow them to say goodbye to their loved ones and die a peaceful death? And doctors began to realize that if they could legally prescribe that medication at their patient's request, not with anybody else's input, it has to be totally voluntary, that this actually enhanced the doctor-patient relationship. And so we've seen in the last 20 years, and that's what it's been, 21 years, we've seen doctors change sides radically. And so as Missy just listed a moment ago, the American Public Health Association, the American Medical Women's Association, the American Medical Student Association, the American Academy of Legal Medicine, all recognize how important medical aid in dying is. They actually support it. And the AMA, which is a little bit on the traditional side, they don't move quickly. Even the American Medical Association has withdrawn its opposition. And as Missy, who is a psychologist, she knows this stuff better than I as a lawyer know, that's big. That's big. And when, I think you heard the statistic she cited, and that was from I think it was Gallup polling, 57 or 58% of doctors support medical aid in dying. Those who have practiced medicine in states where it's not available wish they'd had it available for some of their patients.
Yeah.
So just to answer your question.
Faye, yeah. So I think...
So thank you for the response. This is nothing that I can support. I have experience with dying loved ones, and I didn't have the experience that they asked that I help them say goodbye forever. I had those last days of love and instructions, and so I'm not qualified to vote on this. So, and I don't know that it makes sense to spend a lot of time investing in a resolution that just would never be an ordinance or anything enforceable in Evanston. Like, I don't know why you don't pursue it at a state level.
Thank you, and I so respect that.
So Faye, maybe we'll go to some of the other aldermen have questions.
Thank you.
So Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Alderman Revelle. And this is a discussion for us now to have in the committee. So, Alderman Ruth Simmons, I hear you. I feel totally unqualified to make a decision. Just the whole idea makes you stop and really just think about what is probably the most stressful time in a family's life, saying goodbye to a loved one. I mean, I can understand the presentation. I have to say, I would read more about it, but I couldn't possibly make a decision now. I would turn to Yvonda and say, Yvonda, I hate to turn this over to you, but I just don't think we can do this. I don't feel comfortable doing it. A couple of comments that just bothered me is the idea of a pill or something sitting on a night table is so troubling to me. Yes, Carrie, please don't get up. I'm just saying I'm not asking you to respond, but I'm just saying that these are things that are crossing my mind. And then, what role is the family going to have? And these are really questions for Yvonne to let you know what I'm thinking about. But, and also depression that's associated with terminal illness. What role does that play? So I need to know a lot more, and I know you've spent years and years and years talking about this, and studying it and researching it and following it, but I've spent 3 minutes on it, and I can't possibly, I know you understand what I'm saying, can't possibly get my brain around it right now. Maybe I will later. I've also had experience with a terminally ill family member. Found the hospital was extremely supportive, and hospice care was extremely supportive. Aside from losing that loved one, I can't criticize what my personal experience has been. But I'm just not ready for this. And the other thing, and I'll just be very blunt about this, I've been concerned about the number of resolutions that come to council that ask us to take action on things over which we have really no control, either the state or federal or something. And I mean, I'm happy to weigh in and with that, but I think it's time for the council really to think about the things that are within our purview that we're being asked to make decisions on are things related to the city of Evanston. And if you have Daniel Biss and everyone else on board with this, and they're very, very supportive, I'm not sure that you need us. And but I will tell you, I will spend the time to read and research. But right now, I'm right with Alderman Ruth Simmons. I'm not ready for this, I guess.
So Alderman Fleming had some comments and questions, and then maybe, Yvonne, we would ask you to make some comments.
I don't have any questions. I read about it. Not for me personally, but I understand I'm not making a personal decision. However, I did explain these same things when we met this morning, which is I feel like Alderman Fisk and our resolutions, right? I'm not a big, this is not a personal with your resolution. I don't really see the point of resolutions. This is my personal opinion. I don't, they're symbolic, and then people think that they actually mean something, and then we can't enforce anything, and we're down to lawyers in our legal department. We're getting ready to undertake our budget. So, and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. I did read your resolution and all the whereas and all that is in there. I don't know that we typically take a resolution written by someone else and just put it into kind of our form document. So I imagine, and I would want our legal team to spend some time writing it that made sense for our city council. However, I think as I understood it from our meeting today, there is no, this doesn't need to be done at a certain time because someone's celebrating 100 years as a citizen and we're going to give them a plaque and, so on and so forth, which is more how I think about resolutions. So anyway, all that to say is I guess I would suggest that you all take the time to meet with my peers who have questions. I am happy to continue this in this committee. I don't think it's anywhere near ready to go to city council, but I also am going to really strongly suggest, as Alderman Fisk said, if you have support from representatives who represent us in Springfield, that they really take the lead on this, because we don't really have the manpower, even in our legal department, to just be, and for lack of a better term, crafting resolutions kind of willy-nilly so that people who already represent us in Springfield know that we agree, right? I mean, it's kind of like we have to really focus on the budget and so many more things here that I don't want to get us. I mean, as I told you earlier, I'd much rather the mayor just write a letter and say, fine, and Gable, I agree with this, the city agrees, or something, versus us going through the process of having our legal team craft an entire ordinance that then we have to put on an agenda for another night. And, we spend a lot of time as aldermen on a lot of different stuff. And, I do appreciate that you all took the time to meet with me. I don't know that all of my other peers, many of them have full-time jobs, have the time that I did to meet with you today. And I know they have also pressing issues within their ward to deal with. So while this is important, and I appreciate the work that you guys have done, and I imagine other people in Evanston, want to have this passed so that they can assist their loved ones in however they choose to spend their final days, that's just not a decision that we have any jurisdiction over. So even if we craft this ordinance, I mean, as you said, it's not necessarily going to get you anywhere. And though you mentioned that it does help, and in previous cases it has helped at the state level, you do have our state representative support. So even if we don't craft an ordinance or a resolution, rather, our state reps are telling you they're going to support this. So, I think that's you're much further than some other people who come in the chambers asking for our support for things. So, if you can get some meetings, great. If you can't, again, my concern is using our staff time for this, understanding how much they're stretched in our legal department already.
Okay. So, Yvonne, do you want to say any words of wisdom on this subject?
So, Yvonne Thomas, Health and Human Services Director. So, Missy took the time and met with me, and I heard her, and I heard more tonight about the garnered support. As a public health practitioner, I don't have enough information from my colleagues about the impact. I have more unknowns than known, and some of the unknowns that I'm most concerned about as a practitioner is the cultural and religious implications that this could mean for many different populations. And also, I don't see any of the evidence in terms of what happens after this decision is made. I know Oregon has been a state that has practiced this for a number of years, but what I don't know is what happens after this is done. What happens to a family? What happens in terms of any consequence? And so that would be concerning for me. And I just don't have enough information from my colleagues across the sphere of American public health practitioners that have weighed in on this and have given input. So that would be my challenge. I do know sometimes organizations sign off on an idea, not understanding the enforcement, not understanding how will this be enforced, reinforced, and again, I'm most concerned about the consequence of what happens after.
If I could add in just one thing, I realize my light's not on. Okay. If you all are tabulating more information, one thing I did not ask is how is this implemented with citizens who have like Medicaid or Obamacare? Can they also, you don't need to answer this now, you can send this in further information, but can they also access this if that's their choice, or is this only for people who have private insurance? I'd be concerned about, our residents who don't have insurance or have some kind of state-sponsored insurance, if they can also access this. So you can just email that whenever you email more information.
Okay, so Faye and Missy, you've heard of a number of concerns and questions raised here, and so I guess I would encourage you to go ahead and continue to educate this panel. And I guess one question that I would ask you to send us the information is how important is it that the City Council actually approve this resolution, given that you do have our state legislators' strong support? You have petitions from just hundreds of Evanston residents, et cetera. So it would seem to me that you could demonstrate you have the community's broad support. And so I guess given the other many things on our agenda, would that be a reasonable way for you to proceed? Just go directly to our state legislators. I will, for the record, however, say that I do support the resolution and your efforts, and but it sounds as though, in terms of my colleagues, there's a lot of education still to be done.
Chair Revelle, can I just address two brief points?
I think we're ready to call it a night. Sorry. Thanks. Okay. Any other items for communication? I think we're not going to forward it. Yeah. We're not. Right. No. For the record, we're not. This committee's not ready to forward it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Can I just remind people that we have National Night Out is happening tomorrow night. So Alderman Braithwaite.
Right, lots of National Night Out.
Is Penny Park?
Yes. We have a Star Wars movie. What is it? The Last Jedi. Yeah. So folks are welcome to come anytime in the evening, and the movie will probably start at about 8.
But first they can come to Twiggs Park for the 5th Ward, 7th Ward National Night Out.
Right.
Please do come. All are welcome. We will have a DJ and food provided and lots of tables with great information. And Target is our sponsor. They will be raffling bicycles and giving out free school supplies, and there'll be lots of fun. Hope to see you there.
And the 9th Ward, it starts at, I should know this, 6 p.m. over at Cayman Park West. It's myself and also Ridgefield Park. We will not have free food, but we will have food trucks. So next year we will be partnering with the 5th Ward, who always has free stuff. But we will have food trucks. Each neighbor is asked to bring a dessert, so we can do kind of a dessert potluck. Divvy for All will be there to sign people up for the Divvy bike stations, and a couple other neighborhood organizations will be there as well.
Great. Okay. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thanks.